And HollyKem and I have both specialized in addiction for how many years?
I've been 37 years working in addiction.
Yeah.
I've
And
been sober for 39 years.
so she has it from all ends, right?
Yes.
And I got introduced to the whole field of addiction way back when, and have done interventions, have worked with families. We used to have a substance abuse clinic, so we really understand this whole animal we call addiction. Do you know there'll be 130 people that will die today due to overdose?
Mm.
So over 100,000 overdoses in the last year,
It's insane.
and it's been a 30% increase. HollyKem and I were really stirred up by this. We saw that, the government is allocating $30 million towards a program that's called harm reduction. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I have this clip from Jen Psaki talking about it. I'm going to play for y'all right now, and then we're going to comment on that.
Go ahead. Thanks, Jen. HHS just put out a statement clarifying around some reports that crack pipes would be part of the safe smoking kits that are funded by the administration. But can you clarify for us, were they never a part of the kit, or were they removed in response to this reporting and this pushback?
They were never a part of the kit. It was inaccurate reporting, and we wanted to put out information to make that clear.
What is in the safe smoking kit?
A safe smoking kit may contain alcohol swabs, lip balm, other materials to promote hygiene and reduce the transmission of diseases like HIV and hepatitis. I would note that what we're really talking about here is steps that we're taking as a federal government to address the opioid epidemic in policy. This program, though, is focused on harm reduction strategies, including prioritizing the use of fentanyl test strips and clean syringes. And all of these harm reduction services that will be supported by these programs are intended to save lives from an epidemic that we know is devastating to communities across the country.
And on the safe injection sites that the DOJ is evaluating, was this an ask from the White House that they review that policy? Because I know that for years DOJ has opposed efforts to open safe injection sites.
It's under litigation, so I can't speak to that.
Just final wrap of those two items. What would you say to critics who are concerned that the Biden administration is somehow encouraging illegal drug use?
I think that it's important to step back and remember, just to put a little more of a fine point on it, that we're losing an American life every 5 minutes to overdose. We don't have time for political games. The president's focused on saving lives through harm reduction programs. That's exactly what we're talking about here.
So there's a lot there, and we don't want to talk about it from a political point of view. We just want to talk about it from a point of view: what is harm reduction? And what is the approach? What is the attitude behind it? And that not only applies to the program, but it applies to you and I in terms of how we approach someone that's suffering with addiction. Let's talk a little bit about harm reduction. It started a number of years ago, a couple of decades really ago, when they started using methadone as an alternative to help people get off of opiates, from heroin and other opiates. And the philosophy is...
In the beginning, it was heroin.
At the beginning, it was heroin.
Yeah.
It's evolved to many other things. The philosophy is to continue to support someone in their addiction, even though they're doing something that's less harmful than what they're particularly doing. So let me tell you that again. It's a whole program that says, if you're diabetic and you need to stop eating sugar, it's saying, we're going to support you in continuing to use sugar, but we want you to use organic sugar because that's less unhealthy for you than regular sugar. What it's saying is that we want to decrease the level of harm, even though you're still tremendously harming yourself. And that's the whole philosophy behind the whole harm reduction. But you might say, well, that's crazy. That's ridiculous. Well, sometimes we do that individually. We're going to help someone continue in their addiction, even though it creates less harm than they would if we were not helping them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
My wife
Yes.
has some strong feelings about that. Do you want to say something? You want me to keep going?
I don't know what you have here. So,
Well, let's talk about some of the interventions of harm reduction right now.
what do you
This $30 million that the government has taken from the relief for COVID has been taken out and being dedicated to harm reduction. That money will be used to provide smoking kits for drug addicts that smoke illegal drugs, and that will help them do it in a process that's more sanitary. So we have
But they
alcohol.
also going to have needles in there. It appears what she was saying.
Well, there's also a program called Syringe Service Program where they exchange, they give you clean needles to use your heroin, and so that you won't reuse dirty needles to stop the spread of, say, HIV or other communicable diseases. There's also a program that the government does as part of the harm reduction is they give safe sex kits. They give out condoms. And so they want people to practice safe sex to lessen the transmission of communicable diseases. Pretty simple approaches, just don't have sex. But that's certainly not supported.
Right.
And then you have also the distribution of naloxone distribution. Naloxone is something that reverses an overdose, an opiate overdose, so that the person can survive an overdose. So these are all part of harm reduction tactics that are really amazing in the sense that we're supporting individuals to continue to use in ways that are less harmful than just using, which is tremendously destructive.
Okay. Well, I think this is insanity. Okay. I mean, I am a recovering drug addict, recovering alcoholic, and I shot dope. Okay. So this is insane. You do not support an addict giving them fresh needles so they can continue to kill themselves. It doesn't matter if you're doing a dirty needle or a fresh needle. If you're an addict, you are killing yourself. And the problem with that, if you're not an addict, one of the things you don't understand is that we're not afraid of death. That is not our issue. Our issue is we're afraid of life. So you're supporting the addict to stay sedated so they don't have to live in the world. I mean, the whole point of being a drug addict is to sedate ourselves so we don't have to function in the world because we don't know how to live. And it could be a million reasons is why we don't know how to function. But the truth is, I heard somebody saying something that this was a compassionate thing. This is not compassion. This is crippling, not compassion. Yes, I have compassion for addicts. My heart bleeds for them. However, I don't enable and support them in continuing to kill themselves. $30 million is a lot of money if it would be directed towards treatment. They would be not homeless. They would have a place to live. You get a year worth of treatment, and then you volunteer into that program. I mean, there's so many things that can be done with $30 million to help people that are suffering from addiction. This is a suffering. If somebody has cancer, you don't freaking give them a cigarette if they got lung cancer. You give them treatment. I'm insane about this.
Yeah, I had 3 analogies that I wanted to share with you about enabling or harm reduction. I want you to pretend that a high school student refuses to go to school because they don't like the school. Should the government pay a full-time teacher to go to their home and teach them because they need education? What if a man goes to the bar and gets drunk at a bar? Should the government pay for the man's Uber to take a ride home? Well, it's decreasing harm. It's harm reduction. But is it really the government's job to support him in getting him drunk at the bar and helping him get home? Another somewhat ridiculous example, which I think fits, is say a criminal uses a gun to commit armed robbery. Should the government pay for a criminal to get a knife because a knife is less destructive than a gun to go into a store and rob? Well, you say that's ridiculous, Dean, but that's exactly what we're doing.
Right.
We're supporting someone who is in a tremendous self-destructive cycle to continue in the cycle and just lessening some of the consequence of it.
It's like we're going to prolong your life in sedation and prolong your dysfunction. And one of the things people don't understand is that when you do a drug that is highly addictive, such as cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin, you are putting a mark in your brain. Okay, so every time you do it, it just gets stronger and stronger of a memory. All right, so it's like it takes somebody 10 times to learn something. When you use one of those drugs one time, it's like 100 mark in your brain. Okay, so every time you use that memory is stronger and stronger on every level, to the point to where I've been sober for 39 years. I have not shot up dope in 39 years. We were watching this on TV, and we started doing some research, and they kept showing people shooting up. Within it was 4 minutes. I was watching it, but I was holding my arm and my arm was pulsating and I could taste the drugs in my throat. That's how powerful it is in the brain and how it affects you physically, psychologically, mentally. And I haven't used it in 39 years. So to give me extra needles and pipes so I can use it more to make that memory stronger. Yeah, that's just harder to get out of the process. And to say, well, they're hopeless. No one is hopeless. That is not true. That I will not believe that. I have family that suffers with this and they have been to treatment. However, that person is not hopeless. Maybe unwilling, but not hopeless. So yes, people can get help. There are people on the streets. There are people in America that have never been to a treatment center, not one time. And if they have, they also haven't been to extended care where they got true long-term treatment. If you have cancer, you go to treatment for 5 years and you continue to get that to make sure that you don't relapse. Well, why isn't there programs that you can treat an addict and an alcoholic for 5 years? They talked about the shame. Oh, the shame an addict feels. Yeah, we feel shame because we don't know how to function in the world. It ain't your shame we're feeling our own shame.
Yeah.
So to say, oh, this is compassionate that I love you. Well, you should love us because it's not us and them. Everybody knows an addict. Everybody loves somebody that's suffering from addiction. Okay, so that's, we all suffer in our world. But when you become into that world, it is a dark, dark world. And to support somebody to continue to stay sedated and live in, it's like no awakening. Like you have no idea what's happening in the world.
Harm reduction is a program that ultimately creates greater harm than good and prolongs addiction. And we certainly believe that the government should not be supporting this. But we also believe that we need to live by that guideline also. Help an addict get better, but don't help an addict get worse. If you'd like to go to greater depth about this particular teaching on how to help an addict, we have a couple of more videos that you can watch right here.